Hey everybody, it is Dak here from the Ed Boys, and welcome to my Whisperer guide. The Whisperer is one of the 4 new bosses that you can grind after completing the Desert Treasure 2 quest. The Whisperer can be a tough fight, and it is the longest average kill of these 4 bosses, so you do get plenty of opportunities to mess up and get killed, but overall I find that the Whisperer is one of the easiest of the 4 bosses to get a perfect kill on. As with any boss, there is a bit of a learning curve, but once you've got the fight down, you can get some solid loot from the Whisperer even before landing a unique drop. In this guide, I will start with the requirements and recommended stats for grinding the Whisperer. Afterwards, we'll go over the gear setup and the inventory that you can bring with you. Then we'll go over traveling to the boss before talking about how the fight actually works. And then after going over the ins and outs of how to kill the Whisperer, we're going to go over the potential loot that you could get from the grind. This is going to be a full guide with a lot of explanations and not as many full example kills for the most part. If you would like to see just a bunch of example fights on how to kill the Whisperer, I will be linking 2 different full-hour videos of the Whisperer kills in the description, one with max gear and one with a little bit more of a minimal gear setup. If you have been enjoying the videos lately, or maybe just getting some useful information out of them, be sure to like and subscribe for even more content, as it does also help the channel out a ton. And if you want even more content, I do stream on Twitch, which should be linked on the screen and in the description. Thank you for the support, everybody. To fight the Whisperer, you do have to complete Desert Treasure 2, though you do fight the Whisperer during the quest. Some of you may be here just to get through the quest boss, and the quest boss does have all the same mechanics as the post-quest fight. You will be using magic against the Whisperer. I suggest having 80 plus magic for grinding out any Whisperer kills. You can take 0 damage during a Whisperer fight, so it's very possible to get kills with very low stats and gear, but when you're trying to grind out the boss for a lot of kills, you usually want to max out your DPS to speed things up, so of course the higher magic level, the faster your kills are going to go. You will need some protection prayers during the fight, specifically protect from magic and range, so 40 prayer is the minimum, but she can swipe with a melee attack if you mess up, so having protect from melee is still very helpful. And then honestly, the other requirements and recommendations really are in the gear and inventory, so let's move on to the next section. Now we'll talk about the gear that you should wear when fighting the Whisperer. The Whisperer does have a lot of health, so strong magic gear will make a big difference in how many kills you get per hour, but like I mentioned, you can get through the fight without taking any damage, so it's very possible to kill the boss with very minimal gear. I will be going over each gear slot here, from the best in slot options all the way down to the worst options that I would go for more of a minimal or a budget setup. In your head slot, if you happen to be on a Whisperer Slayer task, then the imbued Slayer helm is the way to go. Technically, it could be an imbued black mask for the same effects, but make sure that you imbue it. The non-imbued black mask or Slayer helm will only affect your melee damage, so it's useless for magic unless you imbue it. If you're not on task, then the Ancestral Hat is best in slot for magic, with the new Virtus Mask being the next best in slot. Virtus Mask is actually better than Ancestral Hat if you're using ancient magics. I don't really suggest camping ancient spells on the Whisperer instead of using even a Trident of the Seas, so the Ancestral Hat is still going to be your best option. From there, you have the Aram's Hood. If you have finished your Void Mage gear, have the Void Mage Hood and the Elite Void top and bottom, and your Void gloves, then Void's really not too bad in here. Plus, it's a little bit more grindable for an Iron Man. And for real budget options, you can go for any Miter or even a Mystic Hat. There's only a couple of good mage capes in the game. The best in slot mage cape is the imbued God cape, which is a reward from the Mage Arena 2 mini quest. Then the regular God capes are still a solid option, and those are a reward from the Mage Arena 1 mini quest. After that, there's no mage cape necessarily. A trimmed skill cape will give you some defense and prayer bonuses, or your best Arduin cloak will at least give you some prayer bonus. I highly suggest getting an imbued God cape if you're going to grind out this boss, as it doesn't take very long and it's a very good magic upgrade. In the necklace slot, the occult necklace is by far best in slot. This is one of the biggest mage upgrades in the game, since it has a plus 10% magic damage boost. As a main, you really have no excuse to not be using this necklace, but as an Iron Man, if you have less than 93 Slayer, the Amulet of Fury is your next best option, followed by a simple Amulet of Glory. In your ammo slot, you can usually bring the best blessing that you have. The Rada's Blessing 4 has a plus 2 prayer bonus, and then any other blessing in the game has a plus 1 instead. There is a special attack from the Whisperer during this fight, where having the Venator bow is very helpful getting through it. If you do plan on using a Venator bow for the Soul Siphon special attack, then you should wield arrows instead of having a blessing. It can be any arrow, since you only have to hit a 1. I usually just bring my iron arrow stack with me. In your weapon slot, you do have a lot of options. The Tumekin's Shadow is best in slot for magic, so if you have invested in a Shadow, then you definitely want to take advantage of it here since it cranks, though it also uses a lot of charges here, so it is fairly expensive to be using. Like I said before, the Whisperer has a lot of health, so the charges from any weapon, really any runes, are going to be adding up as you're cranking out more Whisperer kills. The Harmonized Nightmare Staff is your second best magic option, as long as you're using fire spells and a Tome of Fire, and then the Volatile Nightmare Staff is also apparently pretty solid here. I will say I have not tested tested the Nightmare Staff action here, though. Usually for non-Shadow users, the Sanguinesti Staff is a solid one. It's only a little bit stronger than the Trident of the Swamp, but it does have good passive healing on it, which can be helpful while learning the fight. In the long run, you really don't take that much damage, so it's a good idea to just stick to the Trident of the Swamp and then maybe spend that Sanguinesti money on something more helpful, like a Saturated Heart for that magic boost. The Trident of the Seas is really not a huge drop below the Trident of the Swamp, and you could even go with like an Ivan's Blast, or just bring like an Ancient Staff and Camp Blood or Ice spells. The lowest I would go for personally is the Trident of the Seas, though. You will not need a shield if you're using a two-handed weapon, which basically is just the shadow when it comes to stabs. If you're using a harmonized Nightmare Staff, then you have to use the Tome of Fire to make it worth it. Other than that, the best magic shield in the game is the fixed Elidnus' Ward. The price difference from a regular ward to the fixed ward is pretty huge, since you need that Arcane Sigil to fix the shield, and the regular ward is still a very good shield with a plus 3% magic damage boost. So again, it's not a bad idea to like wait on that shield upgrade, maybe spend that extra 100 mil on something else like a Saturated Heart. The Malediction Ward is still a solid mage shield, and then the Mage's Book is not a bad option and pretty simple to obtain for Iron Men. In your chest and legs slot, Ancestral is still best in slot for magic, with Virtus being a very close second. Virtus is better than Ancestral when using ancient magics, but you don't really want to camp ancients on this boss, so Virtus tends to be your second best option here. Aram's top and Aram's bottom are also very solid for magic. The Dagon High robes are a little bit worse than Aram's, but they don't degrade, which is convenient, and then worst case scenario, you can still go with some Mystic robes. The Tormented Bracelet is best in slot for your gloves for magic. It's got plus 5% damage boost on them, which is really solid. And then the Barrow's gloves are your next best option. If you don't have Barrow's gloves, but you're still doing Desert Treasure 2, you probably should go work on Recipe for Disaster. It's going to be very worth it for you. A Regen Bracelet is better than having nothing, though. Best in slot magic boots are the Eternal Boots, followed by the Infinity Boots. Even if you go as low as Mystic Boots, it's not that big of a deal. Boots are extremely underpowered, so wearing no boots at all really wouldn't be killer. Even a little bit of magic accuracy does increase your DPS a little bit. It's just not very much in the boots slot. New best in slot boots when? Finally, we have the ring slot. The new Magus ring is best in slot for magic. It's only worth it if you're using the Tumeken's Shadow, though. It has a plus 2% magic damage boost, which is not going to get you much of a max hit, but the Tumeken's Shadow triples that boost, so it's very worth it if you're already using max gear. In other words, this ring should be your last upgrade. The Lightbearer is only helpful if you're using a lot of specs. I find that I only need to dump the one special attack per fight, so I don't even bother with the Lightbearer either. The Imbued Ring of the Gods can be extremely helpful here. Eventually, you won't really take any damage from the boss, and you're mostly just using prayer potions or super restores, so having a high prayer bonus during the fight is very helpful. If not, you can always go back to the Imbued Seer's Ring, which does have a little bit of a magic accuracy boost. That's going to be it for the gear section of the guide. If you do have any questions about what to wear in the fight, let me know in the comments section below, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Now let's talk about the inventory setup that you can bring with you. First of all, we have the Blackstone Fragment. You receive the Blackstone Fragment during the Desert Treasure 2 quest. If you have lost yours, you can get one back from Ketla's workbench in the Lasar Undercity. You're going to need this fragment during the fight, and in fact, you won't even be able to start the fight if you don't have the fragment. I do have the Venator Bow for the Soul Siphon special attack. If you don't have a Venator Bow, a Blowpipe is still very helpful since it is fast. Even just having some darts to throw can be nice for a quick attack. Technically, you could just use 2 magic attacks during the phase and get through it without taking any damage, but we'll go over how the spec works in the fight section of the guide. Here I have the Accursed Scepter. This is what I use for a special attack. The Scepter's special attack lowers opponent's defense and magic level by 15%, so it's like using a Bandos Godsword spec or a Dragon Warhammer spec to start a fight, but it's a little bit more effective if you're using magic and you're fighting something that's weak to magic in some way. You do have to charge the Accursed Scepter with Revenant Ether, but since you're only using it for that special attack, you're not going to use that much Ether overall. Let's jump to the bottom of the inventory real quick. First, we have the Rune Pouch. You have a couple of options for what runes to bring. I suggest when you're learning the fight that you bring your strongest ice spell with you. There is an attack where the Whisperer is going to bind you in place and then walk up to you and use a very strong melee hit. If you hit the Whisperer with a freeze spell during that attack, then it's easy to just like run away and skip it. You can also bring blood spells with you to help a little bit with healing, but you really shouldn't need those in the long run. You can get by the Whisperer's bind attack without using a freeze spell as long as you're standing far away from the Whisperer when it binds you. So that means that you could put the freeze spells away and bring Thralls instead. Thralls are very good for speeding up the kill, but don't forget your Book of the Dead if you're going to bring Thralls, and then we'll talk more about that bind attack and like dealing with it if you don't have freezes in the fight section of the guide. I have the Ring of Shadows here for teleporting to the boss, and then I have some house tabs for teleporting away from the boss and doing the bank trip. If you've not gotten the Serenic Tablet drop from the boss, then the Ring of Shadows teleport clearly isn't going to help you, but the Lasar teleport on the Ancient Spellbook is a good telly, and there's a bank close close to the instance anyways that we're going to talk about in the travel section of the guide. So in general, these are just how I'm getting in and out of the cave. The saturated heart is a massive upgrade for magic. Even just the regular imbued heart is solid, but it's only an extra 5 mil or so to get the saturated heart, which gives an even higher magic boost, and it acts like a divine potion, so your magic level doesn't slowly decrease over time. The beautiful part of the saturated heart, it's basically an unlimited divine potion. You can tap it every 5 minutes, and it's never going to run out. At 99 magic, it boosts you up to 112, which is a massive jump. Even at 80 magic, it'll boost you up to 92 mage. This is a much larger increase in magic damage than if you upgraded, say, from your Trident to the Swamp to the Sanguinesti Staff, or you're using a Seer's Ring, you upgrade to a Magus Ring. Even the fixed Elidnus' Ward is likely not going to give you as much of a max hit as the saturated heart. The saturated heart is expensive, but it's one of the most helpful upgrades from magic. If you don't have a heart to use, Forgotten Brews do give a solid magic boost and restore a little bit of prayer. You should bring a stamina with you. Very often you won't need it, but if you do need it and you don't have one, that's like the worst thing, so keep a stamina on you. I've also got a Holy Wrench with me since I'm bringing a lot of Super Restores. You only get 1 or 2 extra prayer points per sip of Prayer Potion or Super Restore from the Holy Wrench, depending on your prayer level, so the wrench is not really worth it unless you're bringing a lot of Restores with you. Early on in the grind, you're likely going to be bringing more food since you're going to make more mistakes. You'll take a little more damage. So it's definitely not worth bringing the Holy Wrench right away if you're having short trips. But also generally, like this ratio of food and prayer potions or food and super restores, it's going to have to be adjusted depending on how many mistakes you make per trip. Also, the reason I bring super restores instead of prayer potions is because they do give 1 more prayer point for each sip over a prayer potion. If you have any questions about what to bring in your inventory, then let me know in the comments section below and I can get back to you as soon as possible. Now let's talk about how to travel to the boss. The boss is located in the Lasar Undercity, which is located under Camdozal, which is located under the Ice Mountain, which is located north of Falador. As I mentioned in the Envy section, there is a Lasar teleport on the Ancient Spellbook, which does require 4 water runes and 2 law runes. This teleports you to the top of Ice Mountain. There is then a 68 agility shortcut to get off the mountain faster, or you can walk around into the Camdozal dungeons. You can also use a Mind Altar teleport, which is on the Arceus Spellbook if you're using Thralls. This teleport requires 1 law rune and 2 mind runes. Once you are in that Camdozal dungeon, the entrance to the Lasar Undercity is in the northwest, but you'll also notice that there is a bank in the dungeon, so you really don't have to teleport too much. The fastest travel method for this is using that Lasar Undercity teleport on the Ring of Shadows. The Ring of Shadows is received by completing Desert Treasure 2, and the Lasar Undercity teleport is unlocked when you get the Serenic Tablet on the ring. That is a 1 in 25 drop from the Whisperer. So you're not going to be able to use this teleport until you get a few kills, but eventually it's a lot faster to just use the Ring of Shadows and then use some house tabs or a dueling ring to go back to the bank, and you can just ignore the bank that is in the Camdozal dungeon. Also, when you've entered the Lasar Undercity, there are some teleports that can be activated to make it easier to travel throughout the city. There is a teleporter in the palace or the throne room right when you enter, and then there's a teleport right next to the cathedral where the fight takes place. Once you've activated both of those, then there's really not that much running needed to get to the boss. Finally, let's talk about the actual boss fight. In this section, I'm going to go over the basics of the fight, how each special attack works, and what your strategies should be for all of them. Then we'll put it all together and I'll show an actual full kill from start to finish. So a lot of this is going to seem very long-winded. If all you want to see is that one example kill, then it should be time-stamped on the timeline for you. The fight can be broken down into a bunch of different phases. Not that much changes from phase to phase, but after each time that she uses a special attack, we consider ourselves in a new phase, which makes it a lot easier to organize all of this. First of all, we have this sanity bar up in the corner. You're going to start the fight with 100% sanity. If you reach 0% sanity, you start to take damage every tick until you teleport out or potentially finish the fight. Generally, you want to teleport out as soon as you hit 0% sanity, though. It's very dangerous. Going insane will kill you very, very quickly. You will lose sanity while you're in the Shadow Realm during the fight, but you'll also slowly gain your sanity back while you're in the Overworld during the fight. You can also lose some of your sanity from a few of the Whisperer's attacks, like those vines that she'll send at your feet. Managing your sanity is important, but as you get used to the special attacks from the boss, eventually you go through kills without even really paying attention to that sanity meter at all. Let's talk about her auto attacks. The auto attacks are actually pretty simple to deal with, especially if you're just watching the fight. It doesn't look like much, because it isn't that much, but the explanation for how these work can be a little bit long-winded, so let's jump into it. The Whisperer uses all 3 combat styles. She will only melee you when you're standing close enough to her, so make sure to stand back at all times. Her melee attack is always going to be 2 swipes in succession, kind of like a dragon dagger, so you got to be careful. Her magic attack looks like a blue orb, while her range attack looks like more of a gray spike. I think there's a little purple on the end, but the gray spike. Also, during her magic attack, you can see her chest glow blue a little bit, which might help you notice the attacks she's using, and they both have very distinct game sounds if you do use your game sounds. Her magic and range attack are reactable, so similar to Z-Back in the Tombs of a Mascot, or maybe if you're fighting the Nightmare, you don't have to actually protect from that projectile until it is hitting you. She will attack in bursts of 3 attacks at a time, followed by some vines that target the player, so after every burst of 3 attacks, you have to move out of the way. When the fight first starts, it's always going to be the same 3 attacks in each burst. You'll notice she either uses 3 range attacks in a row or 3 mage attacks in a row. As the fight gets further in, she's going to use different patterns for these attacks, but they're very simple patterns. And again, you can react to it all. You don't actually have to know what's coming. And don't forget to move after each of her bursts. The only reason you ever really need to know what phase of the fight that you are in is so that you know what pattern her auto attacks are going to be in. Like I said, when the fight first starts in phase 1, she always uses the same 3 attacks in a row. So either mage, 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 or range, range, range. Once she uses a special attack and she's now in phase 2, her burst will now always end in a different attack than the first 2 hits, so you'll notice it's either range, range, mage, or mage, mage, range. These attacks are all 3 ticks in a row, so it takes a little bit of rhythm to get used to when to switch your overhead, but remember that you have to be praying from the attack as it hits your character, not like as it comes from the boss or anything. It's when the projectile actually hits your character. After her second special attack, she'll be in phase 3, but her auto attacks are going to be that same pattern as phase 2, either range, range, mage, or mage, mage, range. After her third and final special attack, she is now in phase 4, and then in phase 4, she alternates attacks in her boosts. So she'll either go range, mage, range, or mage, range, mage. Pretty much she's always alternating at that point. And again, don't forget, after each of these bursts of the attacks, you're taking a step away. When you get her health to 0, she does heal up and go into an Enraged Phase, which her auto attacks will work a little bit different, but we'll talk about that after we go over the special attacks. It kind of seems a lot at first. I just said range, mage, and range like over and over again. Each phase has a different pattern of attacks. It's all reactable, and as you get used to the flow of the fight, you don't spend that much effort like praying from the normal attacks. You get very used to the flow of it, and even that little step after her 3 attacks does become pretty easy once you get into the habit of it. Also, if you just take like a little L movement, like 2 steps to the north, 1 to the west, a little bit of a like a knight in chess, then you're always going to dodge those vine attacks. Now let's talk about the Whisperer's special attacks. She has 3 different special attacks. Each of them will be used 1 time during the fight. The special attacks are not always in the same order, but they are predictable. In fact, there's only 2 different orders that you can get them. We'll talk about that in a minute. One of the specs is the Screech attack. The Whisperer will teleport to the south side of the arena, and she's going to spawn a bunch of pillars that you can hide behind. In just a moment, she's about to Screech, which is going to send 3 different shockwaves across the entire room. To solve this, you have to click on the Blackstone fragment and be sent into the Shadow Realm. Remember that while you're in the Shadow Realm, you will be losing sanity over time, so you want to get in and out kind of quickly, preferably. In the Shadow Realm, you can see the health of the pillars. You'll notice some pillars have full health, others are at 2/3, and some are at 1/3 health. When you stand behind a pillar, the Screech will do that 1/3 damage, so that full health pillar can survive all 3 shockwaves, but you'll notice the Whisperer also sends an attack at whichever pillar you're standing behind, and it'll 1-hit that pillar. So you can't just go stand behind the full health pillar for all 3 waves. Generally, you want to find 3 pillars, one at 1/3, 2/3, and full health, so that you can hide behind them in the correct order during the 3 shockwaves. If you get hit by any shockwaves, they will do 45 damage, and it's going to take away 45% of your sanity. You can use your Blackstone fragment to teleport into the Shadow Realm, check the pillars that you have to stand behind, then you can teleport back to the overworld while she uses the Screech, so that you don't spend as much time, save a little bit of sanity. And also, if you're using Thralls, this will allow your Thrall to attack for even longer. Next, we have the Soul Siphon special attack. The Whisperer is going to teleport to the middle of the room and then spawn a bunch of Thralls in the Shadow Realm that will begin to chant. There is going to be a timer above the Whisperer's head, and when the timer hits 0, the Whisperer will use its chant and potentially inflict a lot of damage. If the Whisperer does not get to complete the chant, she does nothing to you. If you teleport into the Shadow Realm, you'll notice there's 4 different ghosts all bunched around in 4 bunches around the room. 2 of the ghosts will be chanting Vita, 3 of them will chant Sanitas, 3 of them will chant Oratio, and 4 of them will be chanting Mors. If you kill all of one type of ghost, then the Whisperer will not chant whatever that ghost had said. So if you just KO the 2 Vita ghosts, you'll notice the Whisperer chants all 3 of the other phases and doesn't do any damage to you. So to stop her attack, all you have to do is KO one type of ghost. It can be any of the 4 different like groups of them. So the simplest way is to just find the 2 yellow Vita ghosts and KO those ones. Each set of ghosts that you do KO does give you a small buff when the attack is over though. If you kill both of the Vita ghosts, you'll be healed 19 health. If you kill all 3 of the Sanitas ghosts, you'll get 15 sanity back. If you kill all 3 of the Oratio ghosts, you get 19 prayer points. And if you manage to kill all 4 of the Moors ghosts, you actually do 50 damage to the Whisperer. If you manage to kill every single ghost, like all 4 bunches of them before the chant happens, you'll actually hit 75 damage on her instead, though the other 3 buffs, getting the health, prayer points, and sanity back, those don't seem to have that 50% boost to them when you kill all 4 groups. To kill all 4 groups of them, you're going to need the Venator bow so that you can attack each trio 1 time. If you teleport to the Shadow Realm as soon as possible, you don't have to be tick perfect for this, but the timing is a bit tight to get all 4. This won't work with the barrage spells or with Chinchompas since the ghosts are too far spread apart. Also make sure you don't attack the ghosts in the middle of the straight line. If you attack the middle ghost in that straight line of them, the arrow's going to bounce to one of those side ghosts but not the other one since it is now too far away. The ghosts that are clumped in a triangle, you can hit any of the 3 and the arrow will bounce to the other 2. For the 3rd special attack, we have the Leeches. The Whisperer will teleport to the center of the room, and a bunch of orbs are going to spawn near her. If you teleport to the Shadow Realm, you'll see some of these orbs are bright green. You just need to step on all of those bright green Leeches before the timer above the Whisperer's head hits 0. Any green orbs that are left over when the timer hits 0, those are going to damage you. If you manage to get all of the orbs stepped on and you don't hit any of the wrong orbs, you will be healed 15% sanity, and if you step on any of the wrong orbs, they do damage you. You have enough time to teleport into the Shadow Realm and just click on the green orbs as you see them. It's not like too time sensitive. As you get more KC and you want to get faster kills, eventually you do kind of want to memorize these orb patterns and spend as little time in the Shadow Realm as possible. Again, that's not required, but that is going to speed up your kills a little bit, especially if you're using Thralls. There are 4 different patterns of orbs that she can spawn, basically 2 sets of 2. The first 2 that we're looking at here are pretty easy to see. The orbs are bunched in like 4 different groups around the boss that are easy to tell apart. When trying to tell these apart real quick, I usually look for the bunches of 6 orbs, like at the north and south here. You can see on the left that only 2 of them are lit up in this group of 6, and on the right, the 4 corners of that group are lit up. Just eyeballing one of those orbs when I teleport into the Shadow Realm, you can tell very easily which pattern you're on, and you can leave the Shadow Realm and go from there. For the most part, it doesn't matter what order you step on the orbs. You can do them in like different orders, and you can still be tick perfect through them. It's not like there's only one way to run them. So to be honest, you should just do whatever makes it easier for you to memorize the pattern. So for this path, we know we only have the 2 orbs on the north and south, and then on the sides, drawing a little bit of a C shape out of it. And then on the other end, if all 4 orbs are lit up on like the north and the south side, this is actually my favorite pattern to deal with since you can do this in like 5 clicks if you just do a little bit of a zigzag pattern. For the other 2 patterns, these are a little bit more tight-knit. The camera is also a little bit tilted in this case. North is currently a little bit northwest at the moment. When I see this pattern, I see the groups of 4 orbs that are lit up, sort of like a little triangle with that extra like orb in the base of it. These orbs in the bottom of the triangle, that extra one, is what I'm looking at to tell the difference between the 2 patterns. If the bottom one is lit up, I know that I have to hit all 4 orbs on each side of the Whisperer in this group. But if the bottom one is not lit up, there's only like 3 of them on each side, and it's a little bit more of a zigzag pattern. You really don't have to put in that much effort into the Leech attack. You can just teleport in, just click on the green orbs that you see them, and then teleport out of the Shadow Realm. If you do memorize the patterns, though, you can spend very little time in the Shadow Realm, which is going to speed up your kill if you're using Thralls, and it's going to save you some supplies, like prayer potions mostly. So the Whisperer has 3 different special attacks, and it is very easy to react to which one is happening, so you don't have to know which special attack is coming next, but it can help you get through the special attack faster and easier if you know beforehand. She only has 2 orders of special attacks. The Soul Siphon special attack will always be after the Screech special attack. So if her first spec of the fight is the Screech, the second one will be Soul Siphon, and the last special attack will be the Leeches. But if the first special attack of the fight is Leeches, the second one will be the Screech, and the last special attack will be the Soul Siphon. Just remember that the Soul Siphon special attack is always after the Screech attack. They each look a little bit different when the attack starts, too. If she teleports to the south side of the arena, then you know for sure it's the Screech attack, while the other 2, she's going to teleport to the middle of the arena. When she teleports to the middle of the arena, if she's using the Leech attack, she's going to teleport and look normal at first and slowly turn into that shadow form. But if she's using the Soul Siphon special attack, when she teleports to the middle of the room, she will immediately look like she's in that kind of crazy shadow phase. After you're done with each special attack, the Whisperer will use a binding attack, which she will freeze you in place for like 5 seconds. The Whisperer then walks up to you and uses a melee hit. If you use a binding spell on the Whisperer at this time, like a freeze spell, then it's actually going to cancel the bind that she set on you, and you can go running away, and she's going to start using her auto attacks again. You do want to wait until you see the Whisperer move before you use a freeze spell. If you do the freeze too early and you get a message that tells you the boss is immune to that kind of spell, then you still have enough time to use another freeze after that before she gets to you, unless you were standing too close to the boss in the first place. If you're on a normal spell book, you can use a bind or entangle spell to stop her from moving. I've found that you have to wait an extra like tick or two after she starts moving compared to the freeze spells. And if you're on an Arceus spell book using thralls, you can use the grasp spells to try to stop the Whisperer. It only has a chance of actually working though. You first would need to hit it with Mark of Darkness to apparently make it work 100% of the time. That's just not worth your time at all though. If you are using thralls and you're on the Arceus spell book, your best strategy is to just get far away from the Whisperer before you are bound in place. That way the bind is going to wear off before she gets to you. You got to be like 10 squares away to be safe from the melee hit, which does bring you out of the attack distance of your weapon if you're not using a long range weapon. If you're using, let's say, a Trident of the Seas, you can attack from your max distance before you get bound. As she uses the bind attack, take a couple of steps back and then start spam clicking the boss. You really shouldn't lose any ticks from the weapon for the most part, and you can also switch to the long range attack style for that one attack if you have steps too far away. So after each special attack is over, the Whisperer is going to use that bind attack unless you've already done too much damage. For example, if the Whisperer reaches 100 health or less during the last bind of the fight, it's just going to cancel the attack and start to use its auto attacks again. This can happen for any of the 3 bind attacks that it uses. If you've done too much damage, it doesn't use the bind at all, so you got to be ready for that. Overall, it's a good thing if you've done too much damage and it just skips the attack, but it is easy to get hit by her auto attacks if you're getting ready for the bind and she just suddenly starts shooting range attacks at you. When you get the boss down to 0 health, she will heal 140 health and go into an Enraged Phase. The Enraged Phase is intense and no doubt the hardest part of the fight. Both you and the boss will be teleported into the Shadow Realm, and you're going to be in the Shadow Realm for the rest of the kill. So it is important to have a lot of sanity left when going into the final phase, and don't forget that your prayer points are going to slowly be drained in the Shadow Realm. In this phase, she will attack you every 2 ticks. She's always going to use the same attack style twice in a row before switching. So 2 range attacks, 2 mage attacks, 2 range attacks, 2 mage attacks. And again, it's every 2 ticks, not having to flick every tick like you did in the beginning of the fight. She is always going to start the phase using range attacks, and every time she does attack, she also sends a vine at the player's feet, so you have to keep moving during the phase. You want to move every 2 ticks and switch your overhead every 4 ticks, or every other time you move. If you move in a little L shape, kind of like the knight would move in chess, then you'll always be safe from the vines that were targeting you, no matter which direction they came from. I personally have found that I mess it up a bit more when I'm too focused on exactly where I need to click while running, so I've kind of ditched that circle pattern myself. Your main focus is just keep your feet moving from the vines. If the vine hits you, you will take 20 damage, and it takes 20 sanity off of your meter, so tanking a couple of vines can easily end your fight. The second priority is your overhead prayers. Her auto attack can hit harder than the vines, but they will not drop your sanity, so it's not as detrimental to your kill, and you can eat some food to make up for it. Your third priority is, of course, attacking the boss. If you're using a 4-tick weapon, like a trident or a Sanguine SD staff, then you can attack her at the same pace that she switches her attack style. So pretty much, if you switch your overhead, that's when you can attack her real quick, and the timing's pretty easy. If you're using a shadow, then you have to wait an extra tick for each attack, because it's a 5-tick weapon, so it's a little bit harder to make sure you're getting all of the attacks in. You might slow yourself down a little, but the shadow DPS does really make up for that, though. So move your feet, switch your overheads every other time she attacks, and squeeze in some attacks to finally drop her health to 0 and finish the kill. If you run out of sanity, it is highly suggested to just teleport out, since you'll be taking a lot of damage very soon. It's not fun having to teleport out when you're so close to getting the kill, but it is a way better option than dying to insanity right at the end. Alright, now let's go over a full example kill here. I might speed up some of this fight a little bit because the guide is already getting a little bit lengthy. First thing I want to do, I spawn a Thrall, and I am using the Accursed Scepter Spec to try to lower her magic damage. There's really not that much you have to do in this first phase. We only got to pay attention to like one attack. Once I see range coming in hot, I was already protecting from it, and then just step away as the attack is over. And honestly, it's getting really easy because she's only using range at the moment. We already have our first special attack coming in hot. It looks like she is using the Screech. I try to spend as little time in the Shadow Realm as possible, so we just kind of peek. I saw 1 and 2, and kind of vaguely saw 3 over on the left side of the screen right now, so there's a little bit of a guessing game on this third one, but there's only going to be 1 pillar left over, so as long as it wasn't that one all the way on the right, and I did see that one when I peeked, then we're good to go. You can spend your full time in that Shadow Realm and be okay, but it's good to spend as little time in that Shadow Realm as possible. So I got an extra attack in there, and then I ran off and set to long range because I'm trying to be far away during this bind attack. This gives me plenty of space so that I'm unbound by the time she gets up to me. Now that we're in phase 2, we notice that the third attack during the burst is switching over, so she started with 2 mage hits there. And I just got to switch my prayer right before I move from the vines. We already have a second special attack coming in hot, so I put on my Venator bow, spammed the Blackstone fragment, and then tried to get some Venator bow hits in as quickly as possible to get all 4 sets of ghosts. Teleported back out of the Shadow Realm on my own to try to get out of there ASAP. And then again, squeezed in an extra attack while she was using the bind, but stepping back because I don't have any free spells on me here, and I'm just trying to make sure I don't get melee swiped. Now that time we kind of got to skip the phase there. At the end of the bind, she's already using the spec. We noticed that that one like middle orb was lit up, so we're doing each of these like 4 on each side. And you'll see here the pattern that I do it, I can kind of... You get a little bit of extra time if you run through. I didn't really do it right on that last set of 4. Like, occasionally, you don't have to click every single tick to get through that pattern. It doesn't actually matter that much, to be honest. Now, I didn't really step far enough away here, so you'll see she's going to get close. I got Protect Melee on, and she does get that swipe in there. So 52 damage, not great. Got to be careful with that. Got to remember to either step away, or if you have your freeze spells, I could have thrown a Grasp spell in there to try to make sure it worked. It's alright. 52 damage, we're going to survive. And we already got her down to the Enraged Phase. Here, I'm going to spawn another Thrall because mine is stuck in the overworld. Help me with a little bit of damage. And then I'm mostly, like I said in the Enraged Phase part of the guide, I'm mainly focused on trying to move my feet. And then I'm just watching her, like, attack style to get ready to switch my prayers. And then actually, like, my last priority is to occasionally click on the boss and get an attack in there. If you would like to see even more example kills, some of them where maybe I do the specs a little bit slower, I'm using different gear and whatnot, I do have 2 different full-hour videos that are linked in the description, but that's as much examples as we're showing in this video, so go ahead and check those out if you want even more examples. Finally, let's go ahead and talk about the loot. First of all, the perfect kill. If you get a perfect kill on the Whisperer, you get a bonus 50% loot on a regular drop. The perfect kill does not affect unique drops at all. You don't get, like, a better drop rate or extra pieces from a unique. It just only affects the regular drops. This can make a big difference on your overall GP. A lot of the Whisperer's regular drops can be pretty thick, like the Battle Staves, the Soul Runes, or the Rune Ore. I mean, the Battle Staves are normally like 550k. It jumps to well over 800k. In this case, messing up the perfect kill costs you like 225k if you got the Battle Staves. You don't actually lose 225k. You still profit from the regular Battle Staff drop, but you don't profit as much as you could have. Basically, to get a perfect kill, you just have to avoid all of her attacks successfully, but the Whisperer kill is like, it's a little messed up. If you tank a Vine hit or you step on one of the incorrect leeches during that orb special attack, it doesn't ruin the perfect kill, but if you tank any of her auto attacks, if you tank a Screech from that spec, or if she completes her chant during the Soul Siphon special attack, then your perfect kill is over. The Whisperer is the slowest average kill of the 4 Desert Treasure 2 bosses. Let's talk about how the unique drops work. When you kill the Whisperer, you get a 1 in 64 chance to hit that unique table. On the unique table, you have a Chromium Ingot, the Bellator Vestige, the Siren Staff, which is the axe piece for the Soul Reaper axe, and then Virtus Gear. If you successfully land on the table, like you hit that 1 out of 64, you then have a 3 out of 8 chance for Chromium Ingots, 3 out of 8 chance for the Bellator Vestige, 1 out of 8 chance for a Siren Staff, and a 1 out of 8 chance to just get a random piece of Virtus. So if you land that Virtus piece, you then roll like a 1 in 3 to see which one you get. If you land the Bellator Vestige, though, like you have to hit it 3 times to get the drop. So basically, when you land on that Bellator Vestige, you get an invisible piece of a ring, and then when you get 3 pieces, it'll actually drop you the Vestige. This means that the Bellator Vestige drop rate is about the same as a Siren Staff. That's still only a 1 in 512 to get this ring upgrade, which is pretty solid. If you don't land the 1 in 64 drop table, it then rolls a 1 in 34 for the Awakener's Orb. This orb is used to fight the awakened form of the bosses. These orbs are a nice payday, but they're slowly going to drop a little bit as more people are like completing their Blood Torva and less players are willing to spend a lot of money on the orb. If you don't get the Awakener's Orb, you then roll a 1 in 25 for the tablet, which unlocks the Lasar Undercity teleport on your Ring of Shadows. If you don't get that one, you roll a 1 in 200 for the Shadow Quartz. If you don't get that, you have a 1 in 5 chance to get a supply drop. In this case, you're getting Manta Rays, a Prayer Potion, and an Ancient Brew. And then if you don't hit that one, you don't hit any of those rolls we talked about, that's when you just get regular loot. With max gear, very efficient kills, and lengthy trips so that you don't have to bank very often, you can get up to 20 kills an hour, maybe 22 if you're very consistent, but 20 kills an hour is a reasonable max pace. With minimum gear, you can basically cut that in half. I managed 13 kills in the hour of budget gear video, but that's with 99 magic, so if you're in budget gear and a little bit lower mage, you're going to be closer to 10 KC an hour. Plus, if you die or you have to teleport out of the kill more often, maybe you're taking more bank trips, that's going to cause you to get even less kills per hour. So the more KC that you get, the better you're going to get at the fight, and the more kills per hour you should be averaging. The GP per kill can kind of be all over the place. You can get Pure Essence on one kill, or you can get your Bellator Vestige, which is like a 100 mil drop at the moment. I got my first Bellator Vestige at 1038 KC, which is 2 times the drop rate, so I definitely could have had 2 of them at that point, but it's really not that big of a deal. Either way, my overall loot tab was at 290 mil if you include selling the ring for 140 at the time. That would be about 280k per kill. Now the Bellator Vestige is down 40 mil since then, but also at the drop rate of 2 rings, if I had actually gotten a second ring, maybe selling them both for 100 mil apiece, I would have been at a 350 mil loot tab in 1038 KC, and I also didn't get an axe piece or any Virtus, which means I could have had even more money, which means you can make a lot of cash here, and even when you get kind of unlucky, you still make a lot of money. I did get a lot of Awakener's Orbs also. In general, it's reasonable to estimate kind of on the lower side for this, saying 250k to 280k per kill. Keep in mind, you're not actually going to see like 250k each kill. This is just your average over time. At 10 to 20 kills an hour, that's anywhere from 2.5 to 5.6 mil loot per hour on average. Minus supplies, that could be anywhere from 2 to 4.5 mil GP an hour in profit while grinding the Whisperer. As some of the prices of the new items drop, then definitely the profit in here can drop a little bit too, but we just underestimated a little bit to kind of make up for that. And overall, your hours are going to vary a lot. I hardly made 1 mil in my budget gear hour, but then I got 3 mil in loot on the other video since I got the Dragon Plate Skirt drop. It's not like I did 3 times as many kills, I just happened to get a little bit better loot. And then eventually when you get the ring drop, that's a nice 100 mil payday at the moment. Even if you cut that in half, I mean, a 50 mil payday, that's kind of nice. Look, if you don't need the 50 mil payday, let me borrow 50 mil. There is a 1 in 2,000 chance to get the Wisp, which is the Whisperer pet. Not that bad of a chance, especially if you're rocking up to 20 kills an hour. Good luck out there, pet hunters. I think that is finally everything I wanted to say when it comes to the Whisperer, everybody. This was a very long guide, but there's a lot you can talk about with this boss. If you have any questions about the Whisperer fight, be sure to let me know in the comments section below, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. If you want even more example kills to watch, I have linked a full hour of example kills in the description. There's a full hour of budget magic gear and a full hour of max magic gear for a lot of examples. Thank you very much for watching this Whisperer guide, everybody. If you enjoyed the video or you just got some useful information out of it, be sure to like and subscribe for more content. I also stream on Twitch, which should be linked on the screen and in the description. Thanks again for watching, and best of luck on your Whisperer grind.